And quick reminder, your wing can only be the type directly to the right or to the left of your primary type. So you can't be like a 5 wing 9 or something like that. And trust me, I hear that stuff all the time. Now, 5s with a 4 wing are called the iconoclast. I think this is one of the most badass subtype names, so kudos to the Enneagram Institute for coming up with it. If you've never heard of an iconoclast before, it's just someone who works to tear down mainstream ideas. Back in the day, it was literally people who destroyed religious art because they believed it was misleading. So that's the business of 5-wing 4s. Iconoclasts are incredibly intuitive because they mix the intellectual perceptions of the 5 with the emotional awareness of the type 4 individualist. This makes them very introspective, withdrawn people, and yet they're often still great in social situations because they have this ability to peer into the inner workings of your mind. In fact, the artistic traits of the 4 naturally aid the creative tendencies of the 5. So this subtype tends to be the most creative personality type within the Enneagram because they blend the arts and the sciences as they search for both beauty and purpose. On the downside, though, the 4-wing adds a lot of emotional turbulence to the 5, and they are far more moody, irritable, and hypersensitive than the 5-wing 6. Iconoclasts can also be a bit more self-indulgent and impractical, as they usually spend hours reading books or playing video games when there's real work to be done. Overall, 5s with a 4-wing need to allow space for lightheartedness and silliness because the melancholy of the 4 mixed with the potential nihilism of the 5 can lead to a pretty dark worldview. All right, that's the 5 with a 4-wing. Now let's move on to the 5 with a 6-wing, which is nicknamed the problem solver. Right off the bat, this subtype is way more practical, sociable, and hyper anxious than the 5-wing 4. The 6-wing is also in the thinking triad along with the 5, so they are plagued even more by the constant chatter of their mind and the suppression of their emotions. This makes problem solvers unique in 2 ways. First, they're the most purely intellectual of all the Enneagram types. Second, they are the hardest to be in relationship with of all the Enneagram types. Problem solvers couldn't be more uncomfortable with relational intimacy. In many ways, they feel robotic and would much rather spend time with data than going on a date. See what I did there? 5-wing 6s also lack self-awareness because they're so focused on observing the outside world rather than spending time being introspective and looking at their inner world. They're a bit like Sherlock Holmes, as their true gift is taking a mass of seemingly unrelated information and then coming to a brilliant connected conclusion. They're also socially awkward, witty, endearing, and oftentimes argumentative, like Sherlock Holmes. Overall, 5s with a 6-wing just have to focus a bit more on using their observations to connect with people rather than an excuse to push them away. All right, now let's move on to the Type 5's movement of integration and disintegration.